If you and I look closely at automotive history, we find a tiny Italian car that kept buyers waiting. It completely paralyzed the manufacturing lines of one of Europe's largest industrial conglomerates, yet somehow managed to sell over 1 million units while staying true to its design for nearly 20 years. This was no Ferrari, nor was it an Alfa Romeo. It was a humble hatchback built in a factory in Desio, Brianza, by a carmaker almost completely forgotten outside of Italy. They called it the Autobianchi A112, and its story is far more explosive than its modest looks suggest. To understand where this story begins, we must go back to the late 1960s, when Italy was in the midst of its post-war economic miracle. Factories ran at full capacity, household incomes soared, and for the first time, millions of families could finally afford to buy a car. Fiat dominated the market with its 500 and later the 850. They were basic, cheap cars, engineered to bring mass mobility to a nation that had recently relied on bicycles. It seemed like an unbreakable monopoly, but a British rival was about to disrupt everything. Alec Isagonis's Mini was already a design revolution when it debuted back in 1959. Transverse engine, front-wheel drive, tiny footprint, and huge interior space. It was a brilliant, almost frustratingly simple piece of engineering. For the Italian market, steep import tariffs made shipping from Britain far too expensive. But the British devised a highly strategic, clever workaround. They signed a deal with Innocenti in Milan to build the Mini locally, completely bypassing those heavy tax barriers. Consequently, the Mini became highly affordable, and Italian buyers, especially younger drivers and women, instantly fell in love with it. Sales of the Fiat 850, designed as its direct competitor, quickly began to suffer. Alarm bells rang across Turin. Enter Dante Giacosa, the legendary engineer behind the Topolino and 500, a brilliant mind who saw solutions where others saw only dead ends. When Fiat management demanded a response to the Mini, Giacosa did not just propose another 850 variant. He proposed something radically different. A car featuring front-wheel drive, a transverse engine, and a modern layout that could easily rival the British competitor. But he faced a political obstacle first. Inside Fiat front-wheel drive was a deeply sensitive topic. Back in 1932, an early prototype crashed during a high-profile crash involving Senator Giovanni Agnelli. From that moment, front-wheel drive became a corporate taboo inside the Lingato headquarters, an institutional ghost nobody dared to mention. The strategic workaround, however, was brilliant and politically masterful. They would use Autobianchi as a test lab. Founded in 1955 by Fiat Pirelli and the Bianchi Bicycle Company, it already had a reputation as the Turin Group's experimental division, a place where they could build things deemed too risky for the main Lingato headquarters. As early as 1964, with the Primula model, Autobianchi had successfully deployed front-wheel drive on a mass-produced Italian sedan, shattering the corporate taboo without forcing top executives to officially admit to anything. Now it was up to the A112 to take the next step. Engineered with obsessive care, its footprint was kept deliberately compact, just 3.23 meters long by 1.48 wide, with a surprisingly spacious cabin from a high roof and short overhangs. Its engine, derived from the 850 Sport, was upgraded to 903 cubic centimeters, making 44 horsepower, and mounted transversely up front. A highly advanced design for a small Italian economy car back then. And crucially, it featured a rear hatch, a feature Isagonis had completely missed on the Mini, making the A112 instantly more practical for daily use. When it debuted at the Turin Motor Show in late 1969, the public response surpassed all executive expectations. Orders flooded in, waiting lists swelled at dealerships, and the factory in Desio suddenly faced a supply crisis that no manufacturer actually wants: a complete inability to satisfy demand. For months and then years eager, buyers had to wait. In many cases, delivery took over 12 months, an entire year, for a basic 900cc car. The market signal was undeniable. Italy had built a definitive answer to the Mini, and the public loved it. What made the car so striking was not just its modern engineering, but the sheer balance of its overall packaging. Compact outside, incredibly spacious inside, with interior finishes that felt surprisingly upscale for its budget price point. Round headlights gave the front an instantly recognizable character, while the squared-off tail projected a clean aesthetic that rival economy cars of that era completely lacked. It was not just a budget car, but one that refused to look cheap. This was the exact winning formula the Mini pioneered years prior, masterfully reinterpreted with Italian flair. Fiat watched with satisfaction, but also deep strategic anxiety. The car's success proved that the market wanted something very different from what Turin was building. This realization would reshape the company's product roadmap for years to come far more profoundly than anyone could foresee in 1969. 44 horsepower, 903 cubic centimeters, 700 kilograms. On paper, these specs do not sound intimidating to anyone. Yet, as we now analyze the data, those numbers were enough to challenge the Mini on its own turf, the tight alleys of Italy's cities. We must look at the brutal reality of urban driving, tight parking, and daily chaos only Italians truly understood. How did they actually solve this? The answer lies in a design gamble from 1969 that we now take for granted, placing the engine right up front, mounting it transversely, and sending power directly to the front wheels. It was a choice that seemed completely unnatural for a tiny Italian city car of that era, yet it became the ultimate masterstroke. And this engine was no clean sheet design. Chief engineer Dante Giacosa adapted it from the conventional rear-engine Fiat 850 Sport. It was a massive strategic shortcut. Boring it out to 903 cubic centimeters and squeezing it transversely under the hood required months of endless testing, engineering tweaks, and second-guessing. The payoff: a smooth, responsive 44 horsepower engine. It had a punch that local rivals simply could not match. Paired with a 4-speed manual, it hit 100 kilometers per hour in under 20 seconds. It topped out at 113 kilometers per hour, and crucially, barely sipped fuel. For working-class families in the 1970s facing rising fuel prices, this efficiency was a financial argument impossible to ignore. Yet the real engineering advantage over the Innocenti-built Mini went far deeper than the engine. It was a masterclass in packaging, balancing tiny exterior dimensions with a surprisingly spacious cabin for daily use. By mounting the engine transversely up front, designers carved out maximum passenger room within a tiny footprint, utilizing a long wheelbase and short overhangs. The practical result: 4 adults could ride without feeling completely cramped. Cargo fit neatly into a rear trunk accessed by a proper hatchback, all wrapped in premium finishes that defied the budget price. The Mini, while technically brilliant, had a cramped cabin, Spartan trim, and lacked a rear hatch. On paper, the Italian upstart won easily, but the market battle was never simple. The Mini possessed an intangible magic that defied specifications. It had decade-old global charisma and cultural identity. It was, without question, the definitive car of European youth culture. Seen everywhere from swinging London photos to cult cinema plastering posters across every major European capital. Fighting that cultural giant wasn't about horsepower or engine displacement. It was a battle over consumer desire and perception. The collective imagination was hard to penetrate. The Autobianchi A112 had to carve out its reputation inch by inch. But the first structural setback was technical. Early production models immediately suffered from a highly frustrating flaw. Under hard driving, the engine lubricant regularly overheated, rendering the custom aluminum oil pan completely ineffective at heat dissipation. While not a fatal flaw, it triggered consumer anxiety and drew sharp criticism from the automotive press. A fix arrived in January 1972, introducing a dedicated auxiliary radiator specifically to cool the engine oil. It was a remarkably simple fix that solved the issue permanently. This proved the Desio plant could react dynamically, correcting design flaws without bureaucratic delay. Following this critical update, the A112 quickly built a rock-solid reputation for reliability, a key marketing weapon. Meanwhile, the sales network strategically repositioned the vehicle's image, carving out a premium niche that the Innocenti-branded Mini couldn't easily replicate. They avoided marketing it as a cheap British clone, framing it instead as sophisticated, modern, and distinctly Italian. Print ads depicted chic urban settings with young, independent female drivers, shifting the narrative from budget necessity to lifestyle choice. It was a revolutionary marketing pivot. This compact car was not a compromise. It was a modern statement. Consumers bought in. But the tactical stakes rose again in 1972 with the launch of the Renault 5. The French had realized exactly what Giacosa knew: the future of small cars lay in front-wheel drive, transverse powertrains, and highly optimized space. This new Renault was formidable and modern, but as a costly import, it carried heavy tariffs. The A112, however, remained a proudly domestic product, built in Desio, with cheap, readily available parts across Italy. For local families, this economic safety net made all the difference. But nobody foresaw the engineering coup brewing in the offices of Desio during the autumn of 1971. An outsider was preparing to hijack this 903 cubic centimeter runabout and engineer something utterly unprecedented. A disruptor carrying a scorpion crest driven by a philosophy completely foreign to corporate suits. Carlo Abarth never compromised. Born in Vienna in 1908, he adopted Italian citizenship out of pure obsession for motorsport. He built a formidable career weaponizing mundane commuter cars into aggressive track monsters. His choice of the Scorpion logo was entirely deliberate. Like their namesake, his creations were small, venomous, and struck without warning. When he eyed the A112 in 1970, he dismissed the cute commuter label and recognized raw mechanical potential. He immediately commissioned a radical prototype. The prototype he debuted that year was shocking. A heavily tuned microcar pushing 107 horsepower and top speeds past 180. Generating 107 horsepower from a 44 horsepower economy car was an engineering provocation, not a commercial strategy. It was a strategic show of strength, challenging the industry with a simple message: look what this platform can do. If we analyze that extreme prototype, it never reached production, but Fiat's leadership received the message loud and clear. Within a year, Fiat's management greenlit a commercial Abarth version. The first series A112 Abarth officially debuted in autumn 1971. Engineers expanded the displacement to 982 cubic centimeters, lengthening the stroke and mounting a twin-barrel carburetor. They added a specialized camshaft and a sports exhaust, radically altering the vehicle's acoustic profile. The official rating was 58 horsepower, but anyone who ever drove one knew that this number only told a fraction of the story. The real secret was structural weight. Weighing under 700 kilograms, those 58 horsepower offered a driving experience entirely unmatched in its class. With only 4,641 units built, this first series remains the most highly prized A112 collectible today. The true strategic pivot came later, when Abarth introduced the 70 horsepower engine, a development that would permanently cement its legendary status. 70 horsepower in a chassis weighing barely 600 kilograms dry yielded a power-to-weight ratio that threatened far larger prestigious sports cars. Yet statistics do not capture the whole truth, and they reveal even less when you consider that, almost inexplicably, the Abarth consumed 15% less fuel than the standard model. This engineering paradox seemed almost miraculous at the time, and to this day it remains. Difficult to explain without analyzing the thermal efficiency of Abarth's tuned engine design. Formula One driver Arturo Merzario, a highly popular figure in Italy, celebrated for his instinctive driving style, tested the A112 Abarth for Quattro Ruote magazine and became embarrassingly enthusiastic for a driver accustomed to elite racing machines. His analysis of the vehicle's dynamics, of the small hatchback's handling and road holding, helped construct a legendary sporting aura that no corporate marketing campaign could ever buy. When a Formula One driver validates your economy car, the consumer market listens. And listen it did. Between 1971 and 1984, about 121,000 Abarths were built, nearly 10% of total A112 production. That is an extraordinary share for a performance variant of a mass-market city car, proving just how deeply this vehicle captured the imagination of Italians seeking affordable thrills. It was not an unattainable dream like a Ferrari. It was an achievable dream for a Milanese worker, a Roman student, or a Neapolitan clerk wanting to feel something special on Sunday drives. This democratic, low-cost accessibility to genuine driving pleasure generated a cultural phenomenon that observe a phenomenon unmatched in Italian automotive history, the A112 trophy. By the mid-1970s, the sheer volume of owners wanting to race their Abarths compelled Fiat to organize an official single-make racing championship. Formerly called the Autobianchi A112 Abarth 70 horsepower championship, running from 1977 to 1984. It served as an elite training ground for Italian rally legends. On a modest budget, anyone could buy a homologated car, prep it to strict technical regulations, and compete on circuits and rally stages all across Italy. The car's first official sports homologation was recorded in March 1972, and the racing never stopped. Rallies, hill climbs, and regularity trials, this tiny hatchback tackled them with an agility that bewildered drivers of much larger cars. The competitive record compiled over nearly 20 years of racing remains staggering. Even today, the A112 Abarth dominates historic rallies, where its featherweight chassis and sharp setup catch theoretically superior, more powerful rivals completely off guard. What Carlo Abarth clearly realized back in 1970, before having the sales numbers to prove it, was that this platform hid genuine sporting soul, not fabricated by corporate marketing, but woven into the chassis design. When he died in 1979, his creation was already an icon, and his signature Scorpion badge continued to dominate roads and tracks across Europe. 8 generations in 17 years. No other 20th century Italian city car enjoyed such a long, transformative lifespan, without ever diluting its core identity. Every few years, Fiat refreshed the car, updating details and introducing new model variants. Yet its fundamental design, the compact shape, round headlights, and distinct camback tail, remained immediately recognizable to the public. That lively character always brought a smile when turning the key. Yet behind this apparent stability lay a fierce two-front corporate battle, externally against aggressive market competitors, and internally against overlapping models within the Fiat group itself. The first major product update arrived in autumn 1971, when the premium A112e joined the base and Abarth versions. Though it was mechanically identical to the standard entry-level car, it stood out with sports wheels and a two-tone paint scheme, directly mimicking the British Mini's aesthetic strategy. A chrome exhaust pipe and a refined interior with carpeting and a sports steering wheel, all for a mere 60,000 lira premium over the base model. An affordable premium that elevated a basic city car into something you could park outside a luxury restaurant without denting your social status. This was the blueprint of the premium subcompact decades before marketing executives ever coined the term. In November 1977, the vehicle underwent its most critical strategic redesign, the new A112. By raising the roofline slightly with a pronounced lateral lip, they quietly optimized cabin space. It was a precise, surgical piece of engineering, addressing a key design flaw without diluting the car's identity. Simultaneously, the elegant variant received a larger 965 cubic centimeter engine with 48 horsepower, significantly improving drivability. This gave it a strategic boost in torque and acceleration. It also paved the way for upmarket trims like the Elite and LX, increasingly luxurious packages designed to capture high-margin buyers willing to pay a premium just to stay loyal to the A112 brand. Yet while the engineers in Desio fought to keep the car competitive, the corporate strategy in Turin was getting messy. In 1971, Fiat launched the 127, a front-wheel drive hatchback, sharing the same 903 cubic centimeter engine. It became a massive commercial success, winning Car of the Year, but it inevitably cannibalized the market share of Desio's compact darling. Here we had two cars under the same corporate umbrella, sharing the same engine, targeting the exact same demographic. It was a ruthless internal turf war, and the A112 had to survive without any backing from its parent company. But the 127 was just the start. When the Fiat Panda arrived in 1980, the strategic squeeze intensified. The Panda was the ultimate budget car, utilitarian, sturdy, and aggressively priced. Its entry made the slightly more upmarket A112 a hard sell for buyers who just needed basic daily transport. Desio's compact was caught in a brutal corporate pincer movement, trapped between the premium 127 above and the cheap Panda below. It felt as if Fiat was deliberately walling in its own subsidiary. Was this a calculated strategy, or just the inevitable chaos of a bloated conglomerate unable to coordinate its brands without internal cannibalization? Realistically, it was a mix of both. External competitors were not making life any easier. Across Europe, the Renault 5 was dominating the market. The Volkswagen Polo brought solid German engineering at a highly competitive price point, while the Innocenti Mini de Tommaso presented a modernized take on its historic British rival. This rival retained its legendary British heritage. To survive, the A112 had to fight aggressively, weaponizing unique Italian qualities that no competitor could ever replicate. Its quintessential Italian character paired with feather-light, engaging driving dynamics, making the most mundane commute feel like an event. Intriguingly, in Northern Europe, they rebadged the car as a Lancia rather than an Autobianchi. Lancia possessed an international prestige that the niche Desio brand simply could not project beyond Italian borders. In Sweden, distribution was managed by Saab, who marketed it as the Saab Lancia A112. A bizarre branding choice today, but one that made strategic sense in the 80s market. Crucially, in those specific export markets. The base 903 cubic centimeter engine failed strict emissions laws. They had to substitute the larger 965 cubic centimeter unit to comply. This engineering hurdle highlights how fragmented European regulations were in the 70s and 80s compared to Italy. By the mid-80s, however, the car's ultimate fate was clear. The A112 had reached its developmental limit. Its final 7th series update debuted in spring 1984, featuring minor cosmetic alterations, such as a rear reflective strip and a relocated license plate. These were cheap end-of-life-cycle facelifts, desperate efforts to keep sales alive. To maintain a showroom presence for a few more years, avoiding any costly mechanical upgrades that made zero financial sense. In 1985, Lancia introduced the Y10, the true designated heir to the A112, offering far better refinement and bold styling by Giorgetto Giugiaro. Consequently, the A112 lineup was gutted, leaving only a single entry-level option, rebranded simply as the Autobianchi A112. It served as a bargain entry point for budget-conscious buyers looking to join the Fiat family. Yet even in this phase of strategic obsolescence, total manufacturing figures steadily climbed month after month, approaching a milestone that secured this compact hatchback a permanent place in Italian automotive history. 1,254,178. That was the final figure recorded in the Desio ledger in the summer of 1986, when the last vehicle rolled off the assembly line. Over 1 million identical platforms, yet each customized by its owner. How many other Italian automotive platforms can truly boast this kind of longevity and market penetration? To maintain a single platform for nearly 2 decades is rare. Only iconic models, like the 500, managed it. Yet the A112 succeeded without any corporate parent branding, relying entirely on its design identity and customer loyalty. But this hatchback was more than a commercial success. It birthed a unique design culture that few historians talk about, but we need to unpack. In 1969, alongside the car's Turin debut, designer Nuccio Bertoni unveiled the radical runabout concept. This prototype utilized the chassis and mechanical architecture of the small Autobianchi, completely defying every established industry expectation. It was a mid-engined barchetta with a wedge profile and a marine compass centered on the dashboard as a nod to sailing. It shared nothing with its donor car, yet, as you and I can see, it proved a fundamental strategic truth. The platform Giacosa designed was remarkably versatile, so brilliant in its sheer simplicity that a master designer could reshape it completely without starting from scratch. 4 years later, at the 1973 Geneva Motor Show, Pininfarina entered the arena. Diego Otina designed the A112 Giovanni, a compact coupe with a target top, integrated roll bar, and composite body. The name Giovanni was a deliberate statement. This car was a manifesto for younger buyers, a sporty, affordable, lightweight machine, anticipating trends the market wouldn't grasp for decades. Beneath the hood lay a 982 cubic centimeter Abarth engine with a trunk operating strictly from inside, a detail modern engineers might find laughable. But then it was a logical design choice aligned with the project's minimalist philosophy. Turin birthed an even more daring play, OTAS, standing for Officina Trasformazioni Autosportive. Launched in 1969, they built a coupe aiming to elevate this humble platform into the territory of compact grand tourers. None of these prototypes reached the assembly line, yet analyzing them reveals a vital chapter of automotive history. The A112 was more than a car. It was a canvas where the Italian design elite projected their visions of tomorrow. But for Autobianchi, that future was cut short. Consider the Lancia Y10, introduced in 1985 as its direct successor. It advanced the premium compact concept with sharp Giugiaro styling, but most export markets ultimately received it rebranded as a Lancia. Autobianchi, as an independent brand, was systematically dying. In Italy, the Y10 retained dual branding for some years, but the industry knew the Desio firm was becoming a mere ghost. The name survived on corporate ledgers, but all industrial and market substance was absorbed by Lancia. The Autobianchi brand was officially retired in the 90s without fanfare, spared even a press release forgotten by almost everyone. But you and I must ask, who actually killed Autobianchi? It wasn't rivals like Mini Renault or Volkswagen. It was Fiat itself, which had established Autobianchi as an experimental laboratory. Once they harvested the data from those experiments, they simply shut the laboratory down. Front-wheel drive, a taboo at Fiat headquarters in 1962, became their default manufacturing standard by the late 70s. The A112 proved the concept, and Turin ran with it, offering no gratitude to its pioneer. Dante Giacosa, the mastermind behind the A112 and numerous legendary cars, retired from Fiat in 1970, ending a career spanning over 40 years of Italian automotive history. He passed away in 1996. One wonders if he felt any nostalgia for that tiny car from Desio, engineered as a tactical counter to the Mini, which unexpectedly became one of Italy's most beloved vehicles. It was more than a massive commercial success. It was living proof that an automobile does not require massive scale power or price to capture a nation's heart. Sometimes impeccable proportions, distinct character, and perfect timing are all it takes to build a legend. If you and I share this passion for dissecting automotive history, hit that like button to support our investigations. Tell us in the comments which design we should analyze next, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Analysis.